Gauranga Nahita, तवे के आईता के माने धारीता दे Gauranga Nahita, तवे के आईता के माने धारीता राधा रामा हिमा प्रेम राधा सिंहा जगत जाना तके राधा रामा हिमा प्रेम राधा सिंहा जगत जाना तके जय सच्चिदानंद जय गौरा हरे जय गौरा हरे जय सच्चिदानंद जय गौरा हरे That was so good. That's the best I've ever heard.
If Sriman Gauranga Mahaprabhu had not appeared, then what would have become of us? How could we have tolerated living in this universe? Who would have ever come to know the glories of Srimati Radharani and the topmost limit of Prem Ram?
Say something. What is this saying?
Okay. It's saying, if Mahaprabhu was not here in this time of Kali Yuga here on earth, then who will give us this understanding about the glories of Radharani? Because we can understand God is so merciful and time to time He's coming to earth. Many times He takes so much avatars to glorify the Dharma, Yug Dharma. But the glories of Radharani was not revealed before like this, what Mahaprabhu has come to give. And Mahaprabhu revealed this glory, what was topmost secret, what was not present in so many yugas before.
All the other avatars that came, none of them had the same mercy as Brajendra Nandan Shri Krishna. Only one time Krishna, Brajendra Nandan. All the other avatars practically are coming from Vaikuntha Dham. But only one, this avatar, this Brajendra Nandan Shri Krishna, to demonstrate the nature of spontaneous attraction to him. This is so intimate and sensitive. It's a very delicate truth. It's a condition of the heart alone. You can discuss it intellectually to some point, but the realization only comes internally. So then, 5,000 years later, who understood what Brajendra Nandan was doing in Vrindavan? No one understood, not even Mother Yashoda, Nanda Baba. Uddhava understood a little bit. But who could understand what Krishna was doing at night in his relationship with the gopis? And the Rasa Leela is the crest jewel of all Krishna's pastimes. So this Rasa Leela must be understood. It must be experienced. It must be
Preached.
tasted. It must be fully comprehended, realized. And the only way that can ever happen, because after Krishna, there was the Alvars came carrying the current of bhakti, and then Sankaracharya came with Advaita Bhagavad. Lord Buddha came first, and then Sankaracharya came to offset the killing, etc., and brought the Vedas back into India. And then there was the Lakshmi Sampradaya, Ramanuja. He just spoke Vaishishta Advaitavad, a speciality in the oneness. That he preached service to the devotees. He preached full surrender to Krishna. But it wasn't explicit. He certainly didn't preach Parakiya Bhava. So coming through the different Sampradayas, all had darshan of Mahaprabhu. But what were they able to actually give the world? So Ramanuja, he just put the difference between Krishna and the Jiva back on the map, so to speak. Because Advaitacharya had the same as Buddhism.
Advaitacharya?
Sorry.
Sankaracharya.
Advaita by
Advaita.
Sankaracharya. Yeah. Thank you. But then Madhavacharya was saying, no, it's not a speciality, just a speciality. Vaishish Advaitavad. This is Ramanuja. There is a speciality between the oneness and the jiva. This is what Ramanuja preached. Madhavacharya said, no, there are two, distinctly. There is the jiva and there is Krishna. And then Vishnu Swami, then Nimbaditya. Vishnu Swami was speaking Svabhavika Vad. This is describing the aspect or the nature of the Jiva and Krishna's relationship. It was more intimate than Madhavacharya. It was about Rag, Mag, but directed to Krishna, not directed to Radha. And then Nimbaditya, he was speaking Advaita, Dvaita, that there is this speciality, but there is a difference in oneness. Nimbaditya was very close. He was speaking about Raganuga Bhakti. But all of these sampradayas, none of them had this Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva, which is the conclusion, the philosophical conclusion that Mahaprabhu gave. That's in the Tattva Vichar. But in the Rasa Vichar, what Mahaprabhu gave, he gave entrance into Parakiya Bhav. This is what Mahaprabhu gave. And when we talk about Mahaprabhu, the first thing that should come to mind, why he descended. Who can say the first mood? What is the initial conception in our minds when we think of Sachinandana Mahaprabhu coming to this world? What do we think? We think of Prem Ras, of he himself wanting to taste that Prem Ras. Prem Ras nirase korite ashvada. This was the first reason. Sugar wants to taste sugar. We have to have this solid, because it's our entrance into Vrindavan. If this is not absolutely, Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj preached this so much. I first heard it from Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj, I can remember 20 years ago, and not understanding it very well. But the more we hear it, because it's endless. It's an endless river, a current of sweetness to try and understand the identity of Mahaprabhu. Because the more and deeply we understand his identity, the more easily it is for us to access Sri Vrindavan Dham. Without a doubt. So one hand is up in the air. Mahaprabhu is dancing. He's tasting his own Prema Ras, Unnata Ujjvala Ras. This is what he's tasting. This is why Mahaprabhu came. For no other, other reasons, but the principal reason. Don't become confused on this. Many times I ask people, why did Mahaprabhu come? Oh, to give Harinam, to give Ragma. This is true, but not the principle. The principle, the principle. Stay with the principle. When you relish Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's all about Mahaprabhu's tasting, especially in Antilila, of these three desires that constitute Unnata Ujjvala Ras. That Unnata Ujjvala Ras is captured in the 6th verse. Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrishoganaya. The greatness of Radha. And then Madhurima, the sweet qualities of Radha. Sweet qualities of himself that Radha is tasting. So we should really deeply, 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 deeply understand this principle of the identity of Mahaprabhu. Prem Ras Nirese Korite Ashvada. And then after the second line, with this hand, one hand is dancing, tasting. This hand is giving. Rag Mag Bhakti Loke Korite Prachan. He's giving. He's giving us entrance into Raganuga Bhakti. Krishna gave the Raganuga Bhakti. He came to give that, Brajendranandan, Sri Krishna, in Vrindavan, 5,000 years ago. But without the link of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're not going to reach that place. We're not going to get into that understanding. And this is simultaneous that we were discussing yesterday. To some degree, I said I would discuss today the difference between the dhams. Because the difference between the dhams is very important too. That's very enlightening about the identity of Mahaprabhu. Krishna in Vrindavan is incomplete without Navadvip. Navadvip is called Parishishta. It's the complementary aspect to Vrindavan. So Navadvip and Vrindavan are totally complementary. Navadvip is Gupta Vrindavan, hidden Vrindavan. Never think for a second that Jagannath Puri is higher than Navadvip. It would seem from studying Chaitanya Charitamrita that all of the most divine moods in Mahaprabhu were exhibited, these high moods of Astasatvika Bhavs within Jagannath Puri. But this is all Aishwarya. Why? Because those associates witnessing Mahaprabhu's Astasatvika Bhavs thought that Mahaprabhu was Krishna. That's why. That means it is Aishwarya. If they think he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill, they didn't think that he was God. They thought that Lord Narayan had given him some power or something like this. Remember afterwards when all the Gopas, they came to Nanda Baba, oh, you should treat your son more nicely. Don't pull his ear or chastise him. He's actually a representative, he's actually a part of Lord Narayan, we think. We're thinking like this. Nanda Baba laughed so much. He said, you Gopas never grow up, do you? He said, how can this be God? He steals butter, he does all these things. How can that possibly be God? So this is not Aishwarya. This is full Madhurya. And that full Madhurya took place in Navadvip. And in Navadvip, all of the forests, Talvan, Madhuvan, Lohavan, Mandiravan, Madhirivan, Madhvan, Kokilvan, Govardhan, Vrindavan, Varshana, Nandagam, all are in Navadvip Dham. The beginning of Jaiva Dharma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur begins the very first paragraph. He's talking about the entire Brahman. And then he begins to talk about Bharatvash. He talks about Jambadvip first. And in the island of Jambadvip, there is the exalted Bharatvash. Bharatvash is the land of the light. And within Bharatvash there is Gauda. Gauda Dham. And within Gauda Dham is the highest conception of spiritual reality, which is Navadvip. The Gokul is the same as the Yogpith at Mayapur. It's non-different. It's Mathura and it's Gokul together. It's both. It's in the Yogpith, both. Okay. And the Ganga, within the Ganga, Jamuna Devi is there also. And within the 9 islands, all of the forests are there present. Each island is representing a different anga of bhakti, the 9 angas of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Palasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. They're all represented there, but they're not represented in Jagannath Puri. In Jagannath Puris there is the glorious ocean, but there is not that sweetness. And yesterday we were also describing the most intimate relationship of Sri Radha is called what? There are 3 aspects to Radha's nature. Remember? Rishabhanu Nandini is always with Krishna. She never leaves Krishna. Vrindavanam Prityaja, Napadam Nagachati. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So Radha and Krishna are always in Rishabhanu Nandini, in Navadvip and in Vrindavan. But in Jagannath Puri, what is the mood in Jagannath Puri? That is Viyogini Radhika. That is in separation mood. So this separation mood, we can, from understanding Mahaprabhu's intensity of his separation, that the sweetness of Sri Radha. Krishna left Radha for 100 years. Radha, her condition was practically a whisper away from leaving this world. But she maintained her life air simply because she knew that Krishna would be unhappy if he heard that she had left. But her body was so skinny from not eating, even her breasts had gone completely black. She was tortured by separation. So Mahaprabhu was experiencing these same separation moods in the Gambhira. Gambhira means what? Is that deep dark cave. So if we meditate on Mahaprabhu, we can begin to understand that separation mood. But that's in Jagannath Puri. But in Navadvip, Gurudeva said that when we chant our Gayatri mantras and we're meditating on Mahaprabhu, that Mahaprabhu we meditate on is in Navadvip. It's not in Jagannath Puri. So there are so many considerations to this. But it's a very important tattva that our beloved Gurudev is giving us time and time and time again. So to understand fully the identity of Mahaprabhu, why he came, what was his principal purpose in coming, was to taste that mood of Radha in her love for Krishna. It's actually tasting himself. It's not tasting Radha's mood, it's tasting how Radha felt in relationship to Krishna. It's not easy to get the head around it. Materially you can't. It's only a transcendental topic. But this understanding of the identity of Mahaprabhu is a cornerstone to our progress and practice. We cannot progress without full understanding of the identity of Mahaprabhu. And that is also in relationship to Navadvip Dham and Jagannath. Jagannath Puri is non-different to Dwarka Dham. Jagannath Puri today, if you had the eyes, you would see they all had forearms. The same in Dwarka. Dwarka doesn't exist anymore, but in Dwarka they also had forearms. Krishna exhibited his forearm with Rukmini when Rukmini fainted that time. So in, well, probably didn't fall off the other way. But we should understand this very deeply, the difference between Navadvip and Jagannath Puri and Vrindavan Dham and Dwarka. These four holy dhams, because by understanding these differences, we can enter into the heart, which is the Rasa Leela. Ultimately, this is the heart of Krishna's pastimes. Krishna is the crest jewel of his pastimes. We must not leave the Rasa Leela in the hands of the Sahajiyas. It is the Gaudiya's property. It is our property. We should understand it fully, tattvically and rasikly. Both considerations, we should understand it fully. Krishna is dancing with his own expansions. They're ultimately coming from Swarup Shakti. They're all his own parts and parcels. There's nothing inappropriate about his behavior. The devotees must know this fully so they can freely talk about it. It's the highest topic of it.
But some say that this should be worshipped in your heart, but it should not be shared in the general public.
Why does my Gurudev do that then?
No, I mean that is, now I'm not saying, but that is some argument that we must tackle.
It's saying the
Because
last verse.
It makes sense.
Yes,
The argument
if
makes
you
sense.
present it in such a way, if you present it siddhantically, the last verse of the Panchadiya chapters, Vikriditam Brajavadubi Itam Tavishnu, Shushrunyad Arta Varanyamya, Bhaktim Param Bhagavati Pratilavya Karmam Pridrogamasava Pinoti Acharena Dira. That unless we study these topics, unless we hear about these topics, then the heart is actually vacant. How can we possibly develop that highest attraction to Radha and Krishna unless we hear about these topics?
No,
but under Nushrunyat means under guidance of that Mahabhagavat who has understood these topics.
If one does bhajan like this and one is in a close assembly of devotees that the Guru sees fit for receiving this katha, but in general masses selling like Govinda Lila on the street, that is the objection. Or selling Gopi Gita in the street like this to meat eaters and all this.
Gurudev wants his books.
No, but how do you rebut that objection?
Yes.
How we harmonize that?
It seems like a legitimate.
How you and I and you harmonize this ourselves is by understanding the topic deeply. If we understand ourselves the topic deeply, we can present it in any assembly. A part of it, a fraction of it, a half of it, the whole of it, whatever. You know how to actually make it in a palatable, digestible form that's not going to disturb the consciousness in such a way. But it has to be addressed. It's like in that introduction to Venu Gita. This is all described there. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusyam deha ashritaha bhajate tadrishi krida Yadshudva Tat Paro Bhavet, it's saying. This is saying Anugrahaya, this is saying that Krishna comes in his human-like form to attract us to him. And the principle of that human-like form was in this pastime of the Rasa Leela. And that Tat Paro Bhavet, at the end, it's an emphatic statement. It's saying if you don't enter into these topics, the acharyas describe, then you are touched by an atheistic mentality. Ultimately, you don't, there's too much shyness. Because I said just before, it's such an intimate topic. It's the intimacy that disturbs people, because most people are in something of an impersonal tendency. We're coming from an impersonal place. We have naturally an impersonal sanskar. When we were in the body of Mahavishnu, it's described we were in Shantaras, neutral mood. That was our nature. We didn't want to go to the spiritual world. We didn't want to come to the material world. We've had an experience of this impersonal state of consciousness. So it's very easy so what we're talking about is breaking that impersonal consciousness. And it begins with Thakurji. It begins with the names of the Lord, and gradually it progresses to the conception of the divine pastime of Rasa Leela in the 10th canto. But this must... Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati put so many prohibitions on this. Why? To wait until you were strong enough to be careless with those prohibitions, greedy enough that the greed, this is the quality of Raganuga. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhadidamati Kriyatomiti Dilakte Tatra Lolyam Apimulyam Ekalam Janma Sukritiya Nalabhyate. That this Lolyam, when this greed is real, you won't you won't care for the prohibitions.
What is it exactly, the prohibition?
The prohibitions are very carefully
Prohibitions, okay, got it.
following the rules and regulations of Vaidhi Marg. Understand historically that the mood of Vaidhi Marg was propagated for thousands and thousands and millions of years. In Satya Yuga, for example, there are 11 avatars, and they're all Vaikuntha Bhav moods. What was the process of meditation? Was meditation on Paramatma. This was the Yagya, the Yuga Dharma at that time. There are personalities like Vaikuntanath, Ishvaraha, Paramatma. These personalities were the avatars at that time. This is who they worshipped. But now in this age, you know that this Kali Yuga is the worst in the 1,000 Kali Yugas of the day of Lord Brahma.
Really?
This is the worst.
I thought it was Danya.
It's the worst and it's the best simultaneously, because it has the highest jewel. It's also in a casing of the most extreme negative aspect of Kali Yuga. There are 1,000 Kali Yugas in a day of Lord Brahma. So in this particular, of course, Kalki doesn't come. This Mahaprabhu is the Yuga avatar. But this age of Kali is an extremely degraded age. It's just beginning. Only just the tip of it has started that we're aware of. We all know the social ills, etc., that are on the planet and all these things. And we're all astonished at how rapidly it's going. If you think back 5 years ago, things were not as accelerated in a degraded fashion as they are today. And so on and so on and so on. Like they had a thing in one article saying how 20 years ago in a child's locker in the school you'd find some chewing gum and a catapult and things like that, but nowadays you open it up and you find a drug fix and you find a gun and all kinds of stuff, you know. I mean, how, just in 20 years, what a change, you know. And how long have computers been around it? And yet it's like, wow, where did all that come from? So we see how it's accelerating, so we can imagine 20 years on from here, how degraded. Can we imagine 427,000 years how degraded it'll be? So this acceleration, but within that, this gives us impetus to take shelter of the divine sweetness and beauty of Sri Radha and Krishna through the agency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna coming here as his own devotee, what more benediction could we conceive of? And this is happening right now. If we had taken birth even 100 years ago, we perhaps would not have had the scriptures delineated as clearly as they are today. But today we can talk about these high topics. We can talk about the Rasa Leela. We can understand something of the movements of the Rasa Leela, of the exchanges, of the bhavs. We can understand Radharani. She has this mood of Swadhina Bhartika. She must control her lover. If Radharani is not in control, she's not happy. It's her nature, and Krishna adores that. If Radharani became Dakshin, submissive, then Krishna leaves, just like when Radharani was walking with Krishna through the forest, and after the first initial ras pastime, then Radharani, she left, and then Krishna is walking with Radha after he's pacified Haman, and Krishna is submissive to Radha's Bhaumya Bhav. And at one point, Krishna says to Radha, would you like to come to a flower bed, or do you want to keep walking? Of course, Radha wanted her girlfriends to come back, the other gopis, so there's many things happening. But at that point, she also became submissive. She said, well, I don't mind if you take me to a flower bed, or we keep walking, but I'm tired. I can't go. So Krishna said, oh. Then all of a sudden, the moods became the same. So there were no waves, there was no rasa. So then Krishna left. So we can actually understand these things even intellectually, and from our chanting and from our bhajan, we can make some entrance into these intimate moods. Intimacy is what people fear. This is the horror of Rasa Leela that the materialist might experience, is that intimacy, because it's too challenging for them to actually come to such an intimate level of appreciating my relationship with the Lord in such a submissive, such a service way, in such an intimate way. So it's this intimacy that is protected by these rules. But when your desire, when your greed is strong enough, you will be regardless and heedless of these rules and regulations. These rules and regulations are wonderful because they're there to keep the more shy, timid individuals. And if you have been given some courage directly by a divine personality such as Srila Gurudev, then we must be very cautious in our actual presenting these topics in a sense, so as not to challenge too much to individuals who are not being exposed to those truths. But we must talk about them. If we pretend they don't exist and just only talk about them one-on-one, then Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj is lamenting that all these truths will be lost. At this point in time, we see from Rupa Goswami to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to our Gurudev, these truths have been opened up to the world, and we must keep those doors open by our purity and our diligence in trying to understand the nature of this Ras Katha. We must understand it. It's not a sensational thing. It's not something that you go and entertain a group with. It's something that you try and enter in your meditation and chanting. It's the sweetest taste that a Vaishnava devotee can ever experience. And we must not neglect it. We must not be put away, or we must not be shy. We get the courage from Guru. Vayam dvitiyavini veshatam syat visadupatasya viparya shmiti. Asat tanmaya tayo abhijit udatam bhaktyaikyaksham guru devatama. That any fear is because of material absorption, and Guru will purify that. So,
Jayati tedhikam janmana braja srayati indira swaswatatrahi Daita drishyata dikshusthavaka traidhita sava Tvang bichin